Howdy, y'all. This is the Bluecollar Piper coming back at you with Bluecollar Piper's tips number 7, pipe tobacco terminology. This is part 2 of 2. But before we get started with that, I'm currently smoking my Bullet Warden, my Bullet Wizard Warden. And it is currently full, and it just lit up. Some Germains, Cavendish in Virginia, courtesy of Jason, Minnesota Briar, or whatever his handle is now. Tamping with my Jason McNary Resident Evil T-Virus Ampule inspired tamper. Anyways, again, same warning as last time. Lots of information going to be thrown at you real quick. I'm going to spit this out as quick as I can. It's going to be a long video though, and there's just no way around this one. Today we're going to be covering specific common terminology for leaves that's used in the pipe tobaccos we enjoy, and just a light overview of what you can expect from them. That said, let's jump into it both feet. We're going to start out with one of my personal favorite leaves, burleys. Okay? Burley is a very broad term of a style of leaf. One thing that's common about burleys, burley smoke tends to be alkaline, which means it's base or a mild caustic. Burley, in general, is one of the most commonly used base tobaccos for American style aromatics. Burley breaks down into two kinds of main burleys. You have white burley, which is a Tennessee white burley, and then you have Kentucky burley. Now, white burley is very mild, nutty, has hints of cocoa, has a low sweetness, medium body, and decent nicotine hit, and by itself is very much a flavor sucking leaf. It literally, whatever you add to it, that flavor gets added. It's absolutely one of the best leaves for making aromatics, because it doesn't impart a whole lot of flavor when you add your own flavorings to it. More often than not, most white burleys are either fermented or aged. Kentucky burley is a darker, more robust burley. It has slightly less nuttiness. It's a lot earthier. It's extremely strong. Has very high body and nicotine content. Comes off as harsh if it's not been dark fired. It has to be fermented to be smokable. Has a very high ammonia content, and that's sort of the point in fermenting or sweating burleys, is it removes the ammonia, making it something you can actually enjoy smoking. Now, if you Cavendish or press and steam burley, you get a it becomes even more mild, but it keeps a lot of its body. And Cavendish burley is most used for American aromatics. That's the #1 choice of leaf for American aromatics. Of course, others are used too, and others can be blended in with it, but that flavor carrier is usually Cavendish burley. Now, Perique, and I actually read an article from Pipe magazine and it was linked by Solomon here on YouTube. A very interesting article, and that's where I gleaned a big chunk of most of this information, which was an interview from the actual guy, the one man who's kind of like at the core of all perique production in the world. Plus some other things I learned from other places as well. Now, perique is actually originally a burley leaf, but instead of being grown in soils that are common to Tennessee or Kentucky, or there's places in Africa where they also grow burley that has very similar climates and soils. Perique burley is, before it becomes perique, is actually grown in and around the counties around St. James Parish in Louisiana. Now the soil there is extremely rich, high moisture content, but it's a lot darker. As I said before, all perique in the world is manufactured in one plant by one company that can trace its heritage back to the original Frenchmen that discovered and utilized it in pipe tobacco. Back in the late 1800s, the man who basically utilized it as a pipe tobacco used the same processes that the Native Americans in that area used to make the perique that they would smoke straight. And their perique was actually pressed into tree stumps and trunks. Quite interesting. It's slightly sweeter and very dark, with tones of dark fruits and strong fresh ground peppers, and it's spicy. Now, when you talk about periques, there's two kinds of perique. They all come from the same place. That's manufactured today. There's St. James. Now, St. James is pure, unadulterated, strong, unmitigated perique, fresh from the barrel. The thing about it is it's so strong that it's not really used a lot in the pipe industry. Most pipe tobacco manufacturers are not interested in using it because it's so intensely strong. It's actually strong enough that it doesn't even make a good continental tobacco. What is used in most of your pipe blends that has perique is Acadian. Acadian blends are actually St. James mixed with a little bit of the burley that's grown from those areas. And this softens out the bite, stabilizes the flavor, and kind of gives you that perique flavor that we all know and those of us who like it really love. If you're smoking perique in your blends, you're smoking Acadian perique. This also happens to be something they did to stabilize their manufacturing, so that if, say, the crops in the area failed, they could go back, get the old St. James barrels of pure perique, mix just a little bit of burley with it, bam, they keep making Acadian perique even if the crops fail. It's very wise, good manufacturing. Okay, now that we've covered periques, we're going to jump right into Virginias. Now, Virginias are, oh, so good. But all things said, Virginias generally tend to be acidic smokes. You can break most Virginias down into two main forms. Not talking about the processing, but and how they're cured, because there are various ways of curing it for different effects. But in their base form, there's bright or lemon Virginia, and then there's red Virginia. Now, Virginia tends to be very light in body, especially bright Virginias tend to be very light in body. They tend to be fairly acidic, very high in sweetness, and low in nicotine. Now, this is American style Virginias. They tend to present as sweet haze, grassiness, and sometimes as mild citrusiness, while red Virginia has a little bit more body, it's exceedingly acidic, and has a higher sweetness, but a little less sweetness than the VAs. Red Virginia tends to present as more of a dark, musty, sweet hay, or there's always kind of a mustiness or like an earthiness that the bright Virginias don't have. Has slightly more body to it, not a whole lot more. Just to really mess that up, there's strains of Virginias that are grown in Africa that actually carry almost identical flavor profiles. And between you, me, and the fence post, I couldn't tell the difference between African and American Virginias. But their strains have high nicotine. So you have nicotine almost equivalent to Burley's in a straight Virginia. So where those Virginias come from actually can be pretty important. Now, when we start getting into Orientals, the basics there are the Orientals. Latakia is heavily smoked Orientals with aromatic smokes made from specific kinds of woods. If you really want an in-depth on Orientals, I'm just really delving into those at this point. I'd strongly recommend you check out some of Thomas Puffendorf's older videos. He did an entire series specifically on Orientals, and the man knows his Orientals. Another good source would be to look back on one of Daily Puffer's old videos. He did a 45-minute dissertation on Balkan Sobrini and the history of Orientals. That's kind of where I got a lot of my Oriental information. I'd recommend you guys check those out. And now Cavendish Virginia, back to the Virginias. I'm bouncing around here. Cavendish Virginias tend to have a lower acidity. They're not quite as sweet, but they still have kind of like very subdued hay, subdued sweetness. Kind of what they're still good. I really enjoy them, but they are what they are. They're mild. Virginias age well. The age of the Virginia actually improves the quality. Burleys tend to get milder with age, which sometimes can be a good thing, especially if it's a stronger Burley. You can mild it down with a great deal of age and end up with an excellent smoke. So you start taking those base concepts of leaf in, and then you mix it in with processes, all the different processes and the different cuts and stuff like that, and you kind of get the idea of how pipe tobaccos are worked out. Now at this point I would like to add an addendum to my discussion on cuts. I forgot one I happen to enjoy. Crumble cakes. Crumble cakes are actually already processed tobacco. In other words, it's already a ribbon, or it's already a coarse chop or something like that that has been pressed after the fact with a great deal of pressure, and it forms like, sometimes it can be as tight as a plug, but more often than not it's a really dense compression of tobacco that you can just take your finger and rub it across and it just flakes off, a la the term crumble cake. The point of doing the crumble cakes is it artificially ages the base tobacco. So now we've done burned 14 minutes of your time that you're not going to get back, so you know what, we're going to end this. You guys have anything you want to add, please feel free to add it in the comments. Thanks a lot for listening. I hope this helps somebody. I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful evening.